Hey, my name is Rafael Agustin, and I would put naranjilla in my immigrant jam.
Oh my goodness, oh my God, people, we are back with another brand new, wonderful, delicious, and nutritious episode of Immigrant Jam, the podcast. I'm your host, Lucie, and this is so exciting because not only is this our first remote podcast episode, but also this guest is amazing. I've been trying to have him on for a while. Rafael Agustin, the writer of this amazing new memoir called Illegally Yours, also was a writer on the CWs Jane the Virgin and is the CEO, baby, of the Latino Film Institute. Okay, we don't just have like CFOs on. We have CEOs.
How dare you?
I don't even know what that means. Welcome, Rafael.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here so much. You're in LA, right?
I'm in LA. That's why we had to do this via Zoom.
This book is amazing. It is called Illegally Yours, a memoir. And you came to this old country at the age of 7, I think. Is that right?
Yeah, 7 years
From Ecuador.
Así es.
For those people listening that don't even know where Ecuador is or what it's like, can you give us like a little bit of a picture of what it's like, where it is, and what your life was like there before you came to the US?
Yeah, I mean, growing up in Southern California in particular, when I would tell people I was from Ecuador, they just assumed it was like a state in Mexico because we all spoke Spanish and whatnot. But Ecuador is actually in South America. It's between Peru and Colombia, right next to Brazil on the equator, which is where we get our name from. It's a small country, but the biodiversity, because of where it's located and the climate, is quite remarkable because we have the mountain regions, the Sierras, we have the Amazon, the jungle, we have the coast, and we have the Galapagos Islands where, Charles Darwin came up with this theory of evolution at. So it's quite a rich history that I had to learn as an adult because I didn't know much about it growing up. When I was a little kid, I lived in my grandma and grandpa's house, which was a relatively big house. So I grew up thinking I was just like a rich little white kid growing up. And then we had like maids and chauffeurs. But when we moved to Los Angeles, we moved to my aunt's garage and we're like living like broke immigrants. And I was like, oh, in the United States, we are the maids and chauffeurs. Got it. Okay. So that was my big culture shock of like my lifestyle back in South America to what it was in the United States. And I remember in Ecuador growing up, I would watch a lot of American film and TV shows. And everyone I watched were, light-skinned, blonde, blue eyes. So when I come to the United States and I go to public school for the first time and I'm confronted with the great diversity that this country has to offer, I was blown away. I'm like, what are all these like people of color? Like, what is happening right now? This is not the United States.
I love that. You're like, wait, this is not the TV shows I was watching.
At all. I was like, are these the bad guys? Like, who are these people?
And your parents didn't tell you that you guys were moving. You didn't know you guys were moving. I mean, they said you were going on vacation, right?
This is like the long history of my life, but my parents just lying to me left and right. When we first came, I thought we were coming on vacation. They said we were going on vacation, and then like 9-10 months in, I'm like, this is the longest vacation ever.
And they did that because they knew you would freak out, you would flip out, or did they kind of think maybe they were? Because when we moved here, I was 8 when we moved here from Germany, and my parents told us we were going for 6 months, and that.
So vacation as well.
Kind of, but I think they kind of maybe believed that too.
Oh, no. My parents knew. My parents knew. They probably just wanted to kick the can down the road and they don't want to talk about it or address it until they had to. They had no choice. And I just started crying. I was like, when are we going back? Like, I miss my grandparents. I miss my friends. And they leveled with me. They're like, well, we're here. We're going to start a new life. We're going. My dad, a pediatric surgeon who came to this country to work at a car wash, and my mom, an anesthesiologist who came to work at a Kmart. They leveled with me and were like, we're going to community college, we're taking English classes, we hope to be doctors in this country one day, and you're going to go to school, and you're going to go to public school. And yeah,
And you didn't speak English.
I didn't speak English. The first thing I ever learned to say in English was, my name is Bugs Bunny. That's
love
all
that.
I knew how to say. So I kept saying that to all my teachers. They're like, okay, this poor bastard. He is not in an episode of Looney Tunes.
Did you grow up when you were in Ecuador watching American TV shows, like imitating Americans? We in Germany, before we moved here, we'd like talk to each other in English, but it would be like, "Oh, my name is Burger King or McDonald's."
That is so funny. Because it was dubbed, like I watched
right.
everything in Spanish.
Okay.
But I did do that when I got here. Like I would start acting out like Grease with like my little cousins, and we would perform that in front of the TV, or Disney's Robin Hood with the fox, and we would play that out. Yeah, I think that was my introduction to like performing arts.
Do you remember learning English, or was it like you didn't speak English and then suddenly you spoke English?
Yeah, I was so young, right? 7.
Right.
I just remembered that I slowly started picking up English because I was being exposed to it at school. Whereas my parents, it took them longer to pick up the language. Also, they're adults, so it's much harder for adults to pick up a new language. But yeah, I picked it up very fast.
You talk about translating for your parents, and I think that's like such a, that's something that I was able to relate to so much. And I think like, so many immigrant kids, first generation kids can relate to this, like translating for your parents, being like totally overwhelmed, not knowing the terminology in the language, and, being like, I'm 5 years old, I don't know bank terminology, leave me alone,
And also the power dynamics in the household and how it changes. Like all of a sudden, you are the person who has to talk to the teachers and to the authority figures and to like the landlord. And yeah, I can't imagine what that must feel like for an adult to rely on their like 7, 8, 9-year-old to be like, this is the representative of my family who will speak to you.
But you don't really talk about ever resenting your parents for not speaking English or for needing you to translate. And I thought that was interesting, because I remember, and a lot of people that I talked to on the podcast say that, they were embarrassed and they resented their parents, and they kind of thought like, why can't you just speak English? And why do I have to translate? And why can't you just be American? And it didn't come across to me at any point in the book that you resented your parents at all. It was always it felt like you took that role on like very lovingly.
Oh, wow. It probably comes from the fact that I saw their sacrifice so vividly. I mean, I share in the first chapter that when I was 6 years old, I saw my mom and dad save a child's life in the operating room, right?
Yeah,
they were
right.
doctors, and one night, they didn't have that much money, didn't have money for like childcare. So my dad gets called into an emergency, and at 6 years old, he brings me into the OR, and they put scrubs on me and they just push me into the operating room. So I think, having been witness to that, and then, going from that to working menial jobs in the United States, I never resented them, because I'm like, damn, y'all are sacrificing an awful lot for this like American experiment. So I felt like I was just doing my part.
And you never resented America for that either?
I resented the sleazy door-to-door salesman who sold me Encyclopedia Britannicas. I hated that guy, because again, my dad doesn't speak like very good English, so I'm the translator for like destroying my own future, because I knew my dad was going to make me do homework, and this, like, I knew I'd have to read them if he bought them, and this guy is trying to force my dad to buy them, and I'm in the middle like translating, going like, oh, I don't want to translate for you. The United States, I feel like, especially immigrants and undocumented Americans, we have like this love-hate relationship. We love it. We love this country so much, and it just won't love us back, right? I feel like we're in an abusive relationship, and I'm hoping that will soon change. And I'm so happy to have a podcast like yours that's helping illuminate our stories and to prove to the rest of the nation that we are just Americans. And this is a nation of immigrants and always has been.
Your story in particular, because you humanize everything about the term undocumented, and you tell a story in such detail and you kind of really lay it out, and we really feel like we're there and we're seeing it through your eyes from every age. And I think that what's so important about that is that through reading that, you kind of go, well, yeah, things don't have to be the way they are. They're made this way because it benefits the system, right? Or
Right.
because we kind of don't question it.
Laws are broken every day at all levels. But it's not about the laws that are broken. It's always about who breaks the laws.
Right. Absolutely.
That's the big hypocrisy of what we do as Americans, right? Because when immigrants came to this country, like in the time of Ellis Island, right? Like World War I, World War II, when they were arriving, these immigrants arrived with no documentation, and they were processed within an hour or two.
Right.
And then
because they needed them.
Not just, yeah, exactly. But we could do that today if we wanted to.
Absolutely.
We just don't want to.
Well, exactly.
Why?
And like you say, your parents paid taxes. Yeah. Their whole lives living here. And I thought the story about them wanting to sign up for the military, oh my God, I'm going to cry. That like really made me very emotional, because it was like, wow, they really wanted to like give their service to this country, Yeah. And I mean, in a way, I feel like their life was saved that they weren't allowed to. And I was so happy that it didn't work out. But
that was the Iraq War. They tried to enlist, and the recruiting officer was so desperate to recruit them. It made perfect. He's like, medical doctors that we can send to the front lines. Like, let's go. And to him, it made perfect sense. Like, all of the development of my parents, their education, their medical residencies, all that was paid by a different country. So they come here, and the United States is getting their labor for free. And this gentleman's just trying to recruit them, but he couldn't get any superior to sign off on their immigration problems. So, that was a sad chapter of their lives, that they couldn't join the war efforts, but at the same time, like you said, it's probably for the best that they didn't go.
Right. But again, it's these, like you said, the rules are broken all the time, but we just don't want to break them, or there are reasons why they shouldn't be, not even broken, changed. The rules can be changed, And I
listen, let me just say, I have nothing against them, but the Amish break child labor laws, Social Security laws, a lot of no one's trying to deport the Amish, is what I'm trying to say. Right?
Yes.
And if we're gonna be like strict about our laws and our rules, and let's take a look at everybody. But again, like the immigrants that came from Western Europe through Ellis Island, that was okay. But when the immigrants looked different, when the immigrants looked at diversity of this world, then we needed to stop immigration.
Yeah. Yeah. And I worked in restaurants for a long time. And I remember when I found out that like a lot of the guys working in the kitchen had bought their Social Security numbers in Flushing, Queens, And I was like, wow, that is so crazy, because the government, they know that this is happening. And they need it to happen, right? Because they have no responsibility towards these people. They don't need to take care of them. There's no financial. And as you said about your parents, for example, another country paid for their education. America had $0 invested and could reap and could, basically just sit back and reap the benefits of it. And that's what's so, and that's what's also so shocking about the manipulation of the narrative, right? About how the narrative is manipulated and how people, eat up this, oh yeah, it's wrong, and they're breaking the law, and why can't they do it the right way? And as you say, it's about the system not wanting to include people that are already part of this country, right?
Because it took me many, many years to realize that immigration is and has always been a labor issue.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it is. That's why
Mm-hmm.
we try to criminalize these folks so that we take away their power. So the Pew Hispanic Research Center, and not to get too like nerdy and wonky, but the Pew Hispanic Research Center discovered that deportation happens most frequently for undocumented workers during two occasions. One, right before payday, or two, right when they try to unionize.
Mm.
So why is it,
Ugh,
why
I got
is it,
goosebumps.
yeah, so why is it important to criminalize them, to call them illegals, to make them, when you criminalize someone, you take away their First Amendment right to free speech and the First Amendment right to assemble. You take away
Right.
all their power, and what are they? They're just labor
Right.
that you control, that you can pay or not pay.
Right.
That's the scheme that we've been working on as a nation since the founding of this country. Let's not forget that 100 years, I mean, before we become the United States, before the Declaration of Independence, Jamestown, 1607, founded by the London Company, which is a tobacco company. A few years later, the first African forced migration, our slaves come into this country.
Yeah.
And there's a marriage between US corporations and slave labor 150 years before we're even a country.
Right.
It's ingrained into our DNA, which is so difficult to get past all these, quote unquote immigration problems, because we haven't even dealt with like our original sin of slavery as a nation.
Absolutely.
Let's get through that, and then we'll talk about the slave labor that still continues to this day.
Right. Right. Right.
I mean, the book is not about any of this, but
but it's not about any of this. But I think it's exactly this, type of story that makes you realize that. That's what I really loved about this book, that it really makes you, it's funny because it's like, I always think a good movie stays with you and you start thinking about different things like on day 2 and on day 3 and on day 4, you know what I mean? And it kind of like takes a little bit of a life inside you, and reveals different things to you as you continue on after having watched it. And that's how I feel about this book as well, that you touch on so many things, but you do it with so much humor. Obviously, it's a very funny book, and what I really think is admirable is what I kind of touch on in the beginning, that it doesn't feel like there's resentment, or bitterness in that sense. And therefore it feels like a total triumph, and, you did.
Wow.
Yeah.
I never thought of it that way. That's interesting. A friend of mine recently read the book, was like, what's crazy? Like it was your insistence of never giving up. It was like that you've always had that as a kid. And I read it in your book. I was like, yeah, that's Rafa. Like he's like, I'll figure a way out of it. And you just keep going.
I think it's so interesting. Where does that come from? Is it nature or nurture, or is it just like, part of a person's personality from the day they were born? Or is it this like cross-cultural immigrant thing that kind of like triggers that?
Let me be honest, that it wasn't until a few years back I was listening to a conversation with John Cho, the actor, and he said he's a child of immigrants, and he said that growing up he always felt that gigantic pressure by his parents to, you have to achieve everything we couldn't, like we sacrificed everything for you. And he was like, that is so fucked up. That is so much pressure to put on a child. And it wasn't until he said that I was like, oh my God, that's what I've been feeling my whole life.
Yeah.
Like all this pressure to try to be successful, try to accomplish something, for the sacrifice that they made, for like everything they had given up to try to find a better life in the United States. I think you're right. I think it's all of that.
Yeah, I think so. I think so too. I read a quote recently about immigrant guilt, or like first generation guilt. And I had that moment where I was like, oh my God, yes. Like that you kind of never really allow yourself to be really happy about something because, it's kind of like you don't really deserve you need to keep going, and you can't really dwell on anything, and it's not, and you feel kind of bad for focusing on yourself. I remember when I started therapy, and that wasn't that long ago, I was like, oh my God, this is so self-indulgent. You know what I mean?
Wow.
And just, or self-care. And then I don't know if you did this or do this, but there are certain things where it's like, then I go, oh, that's so American. This like positivity, this like constant positivity is so American, You know what I mean? It's like, oh, we don't do that. Us Europeans don't do that. We're not positive. We don't have unfounded enthusiasm. I remember taking this writing class, and this guy's like, just close your eyes, everybody. And I just want you to internalize that wherever you are with your writing is the right place to be. And I closed my eyes and I was like, this fucking American bullshit.
The positivity industrial complex is real. That is so funny.
But then,
but I appreciate that you're talking about therapy, especially for like immigrants. We don't talk about mental health. People from marginalized communities, we don't talk about mental health. But recently I was reading something that kind of shocked me. It was a study that said that children who go from kind of like from nothing, from being poor to being successful, are happier than children who are born into privilege and wealth and continue to stay on privilege and wealth. And I've been trying to figure out what that means. There's something about the journey that makes you happy, right? It's not the arrival, it's the journey.
I see that. I can see that. I mean, I lived in an apartment where my bathtub was in my kitchen for the last 5-6 years, and I had no freezer.
It's called New York.
Exactly. It's called New York. And a rat was my neighbor.
Oh, Jesus.
But it was in the East Village and stuff like that. And then now I moved into a better apartment, and every day I'm like, oh my God, I have a bathroom. This is so fucking awesome. And oh my God, I love my freezer. I'm just taking out ice cubes and
putting back in.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, I can buy frozen pizza. I don't even like frozen pizza, but I'm like, but it's like that thing. It's like, if I would have just had a great, amazing Park Avenue, I don't know who wants to live on Park Avenue. Nobody, but you know what I mean? Apartment forever. I never would be this happy about just having a normal bathroom.
Right? So, it's so crazy.
So I hear that.
It's the simple things in life, not having the bathtub in the kitchen. There you go.
It's the simple things in life. And yeah, and I do think it's like if you come from nothing and then achieve success, of course you appreciate the things you have more. That makes sense to me totally. But one of the stories I loved in your book is the Oliver Stone story.
Wow. Yeah.
So you found yourself in Oliver Stone's house.
So my uncle started dating and eventually married Oliver Stone's son's nanny, who was Peruvian. So he would start hanging out at Oliver Stone's house in Santa Monica, and all of us were like, wait, what are you doing? Like, where are you going? And then one weekend, Oliver Stone and his family left, or him and his wife took out on vacation, and they invited us to go over. And I was obsessed. I had never been to such a big house in the United States in my life, and it was so beautiful. And I remember that I was told, like, you can't go into this room. So I definitely had to go into that room. I waited for everyone to go to sleep. I snuck out of the room I was staying in, and I wasn't trying to steal anything. I just needed to go into that room I was told not to go into.
Of course.
And I opened it was like a closet, but it was a walkway. So it was how you got downstairs. And it was just an office full of boxes and boxes of research. And it was so like, I was so amazed that someone could do this much research on one topic, because everything was about like JFK, because he was working on that film, and everything, all the boxes were either about JFK or The Doors. That's like the period in his film career. And I was just so astounded by it, because I think I was
that's where you got the poster behind you. You stole it, didn't you? I'm kidding.
Oh my God, I forgot. Oh, yes. So check this out. The cast of The Doors did this painting as a gift for Oliver Stone. And my aunt knew, because she had a bunch of Oliver Stone posters in her house that I was like, could I get a poster? Because I love movies all my life. She's like, I'm sorry, I can't give you a poster, but I can give you this painting. Oliver Stone gave it to me. And I was like, I don't want no painting. I want a poster. And I was like 12 years old. She gifted me this that was Oliver Stone's. And I dragged it from small, tiny apartment to small, tiny apartment my whole life since I was like 12, 13 years old.
That's
And
amazing.
I still have it. I
That's
hope to one day meet Oliver
amazing.
Stone and be like, I have one of your paintings in my house.
I love it. That's what I was going to ask you if you ever met Oliver Stone.
No, I never did get to meet him. But I was, again, that was once I saw that as a child, I couldn't unsee that. I knew that house and how he lived in his office, like his laboratory, and all the scripts that I was like, what are these weird formatted books? And they were like screenplays.
Right.
I knew I wanted that. I didn't know how I was going to attain it, but I wanted that. I wanted to do what Oliver Stone did so that I can have this type of life.
Wow.
And you know, and I was living, we were broke out of our minds, living in a small, tiny apartment and like Duarte, California. You know what I mean? But it didn't matter because in my head, I was already living in Oliver Stone's office.
Amazing. Maybe he'll direct the movie version of the book. That'd be interesting.
He doesn't even know I'm alive.
All of a sudden, everybody gets killed.
It's so dramatic, this Oliver Stone guy.
It's very bloody. That's crazy. What made you what was the actual thing that made you want to write this book? And had you been carrying around this desire to write a book for a long time, or was it a pandemic thing, or what exactly happened that you sat down and wrote it?
All of the above. It's all of the above. I can honestly say that my immigration problems are what led me into the arts, into this career of writing. When I discover I'm undocumented, I can't get financial aid. I have no support. I have no direction. So I go to community college here in California. And at community college, I started taking all these classes and eventually discovered theater, you know, and then to me, it felt natural because I've been acting American my whole life. So I was like, okay, let's go. And I slowly discovered, okay, there are no roles for minorities or let alone Latinos and Latinas. So I start the idea of writing myself into existence. And so theater and playwriting eventually got me my first TV development deal for a play that I had written. And I was so young and so inexperienced and not ready to fight for my voice. And, you know, being a people pleaser, I was just accepting notes left and right. And then the Frankenstein monster that came out at the other end of that sausage making machine was a show with my name on it that I didn't even like, you know, and that was like heartbreaking. I took a step back and realized that if I was going to fail in Hollywood, I at least wanted to fail by my own decisions and my own merit. So that's how I decided to tell my life story. I was like, okay, what if I focus on telling my parents' story and their journey here and me discovering I was undocumented in high school. So I wrote a pilot, a TV pilot, like essentially like the Latino, the Wonder Years, if you remember that TV show. Yeah. It's what set the path for like Blackish and Fresh Off the Boat and those types of shows, right. the real O'Neill. So then I wrote this pilot and I became a Sundance Institute fellow because of it. And that got me my first Hollywood agent. That got me staffed in my first writer's room. I sold it. It was my first TV sell in Hollywood with CBS Studios. It didn't get made because there's so many things in development in Hollywood that don't get made. But I was always like, oh, God, I want to share that story. And maybe this TV show was not it because I have so many stories from like my youth and then later on in life. So I thought maybe a book was the right way to do it. But because I was so caught up with work and I'm so busy and we all get in the rat race, it really did take this global pandemic to force me to like take a pause, to reflect on my life. And I was like, oh, well, what do I want my legacy to be on this earth? And what do I want to say? And that's when the book, that's how the story came back. Like, oh, I want to share the all-American family story of, just people who happen. Like when I describe the book, I say it's a comedic coming of age memoir about an all-American family that just happens to be undocumented.
I love that.
That's how I wanted to write it.
Yeah.
And that's how I started. That's how the book came to be.
Do you feel like a sense of, do you feel like you represent undocumented people? Do you feel like, no, I don't want to represent anybody. I represent just me and my story. Or do you feel like a sense of wanting to speak for, all these people that live this type of life that you live for so long? Do you feel like that's not what you're trying to do? What you're trying to do is just tell your story and maybe open some eyes through that?
I do feel like I'm part of the community, but I want to be careful because, you see, when I discovered I was undocumented, there was no Dreamer movement. It was the late
Right.
90s. Now there's a sense of community. There's a sense of there's a movement called Undocumented and Unafraid, which I greatly admired because I felt alone in the world and I was very, very afraid. So the only thing I'm trying to do with the book is to show how undocumented immigrants are just American like everyone else, right? If I can do my part, that makes me very happy because I just wanted to point out that, we make our economy stronger. We make our workforce younger, and you can't deny that we make our food taste better. So that was my part of, at the very least, showing some examples of what undocumented Americans contribute to this country. That's what I wanted. That's exactly what I wanted to do with the book.
And what would you say to yourself back then from now? Do you know what I mean? Like, what would you tell this kid who's afraid and undocumented and doesn't know what is, what up, down, left, or right is? Do you have something that you think you would say to that person, and maybe to undocumented people living here today?
For the undocumented population among us, I just wanted to let them know that they should know, and I think they do know that they are American, despite of what anyone says to them. They are American, and they should be proud of that. It is it's everyone else's responsibility to fix our broken immigration system, which, by the way, it's not broken. It's designed to be this way, but we have to do our part. To give them the proper path to citizenship. If you've been here in this country, you're contributing to this economy, then you deserve to be American and you deserve to have citizenship. But I'm sorry, I digress. The thing that I would tell my younger self is probably the thing that I realize as an adult now is that vulnerability was my superpower.
That's
and it took me so long to learn that. And in being so guarded and scared and like closed off from the world after I learned that I was undocumented, I think if I would have learned earlier that vulnerability was my superpower, I'd be in a much better place. I think vulnerability is what makes great artists, is what makes great communicators and great leaders, right? But it took me a long time. It literally took one of my college professors for me to come out of the shadows, right? Like for me to tell her the truth of my legality, and her response to me, the way she was so caring and so supportive and leaned in to try to help me and figure out like who she needed to call to help fix the thing. I knew there was nothing she could do to fix it, but I just loved being able to see somebody outside of my family actually like caring about me despite of my legality. So it was that experience that showed me, oh man, I shouldn't have been so closed off, and I should have been brave enough to be more vulnerable to people. And in a cynical world, vulnerability is an act of courage. So yeah, that's probably what I would have told my younger self.
Applause. I love that. It's so true, and I can so relate to that. I think that, that that's a big thing for me too, to realize all the things that I always thought were weaknesses about
Yes.
myself are
Yes.
actually my strengths, you know.
Wow.
And I always get asked at panels that, you know, because I do this voice, how do I, you know, become a voice actor? How do I do this? And then I'm always like, whatever you think is weird that you should change, just even specifically about your voice, that's the amazing thing about you and your voice. And that's what's going to get you work or noticed or whatever you want, you know? And so I really relate to that.
Oh my God, I love that. I remember I read a while back, I think I think they were talking to a casting director who was like, I remember when Leonardo DiCaprio was a child, like still coming up. And
Mm,
and she was like, you know what made him so special? He didn't get aside and go like, I must interpret this person or I must interpret this person. He always brought himself to everything.
mm-hmm,
So he
mm-hmm,
always stood out by just being himself. And
right.
I'm like, wow, I wish I would have known that.
I know, right? Damn it. I could have been Leonardo
I was
DiCaprio.
so close. That's all right. That's okay. But
But
I
was he
love
dating a baby?
oh
Sorry.
too soon. 25 is the limit. No, but I love what you said about the my what I thought were my weaknesses were really my strengths all along. What a remarkable thing to like come to and to realize as an adult.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
And it took also telling my story, you know, writing a show about it. And I remember watching John Leguizamo's Freak, the opening where he goes like, all my Latinos bark, all my Black people meow, all my white people. Then he says like a super long sentence in Spanish that they can't repeat. So everybody laughs. And, you know, he like immediately establishes his community. And I just remember sitting there thinking like, oh my God, this is so depressing. Like, what am I going to say? All my German, Romanian, Jewish immigrants who don't know who they are. You know what I mean? And I was like, who's going to relate to my story? This sucks. I don't have, what is my community? And then in doing the show, I was like, oh yeah, that's my strength. And everybody can relate to the feeling of otherness. And that's what it is if you boil it down, you know, and that's what all this, you know, comes down to in a way. That's why the feeling is the same, right? The situations might be different, the names, the locations, the geography, whatever the circumstance, but the feelings are the same and are universal, right? But your
Mm,
parents ended up going back. Your mom ended up going back to Ecuador, and then she came back again, right?
yes,
You
yes,
got her
yes.
back to, and now she's back in LA. So do you feel like you, in a way, from the outside, it's like you completely achieved the American dream
From the outside.
from the
Yeah,
outside?
yeah,
Yeah,
from the outside, I do think people see me as a success story, especially from having been undocumented, to be able to
right.
now work for in Hollywood. That's, you know, from being an English learner to writing for English language television. I have a lot to celebrate. But I'm still dealing with my shit.
Of course.
There's a lot that came with
Of
it. I mean,
course.
the biggest thing that I came to realize, like literally probably like a month ago, is that because we moved so much, I never set roots anywhere.
Mm,
And I feel uncomfortable staying in one place for too long.
mm-hmm,
And that's the stuff I have to deal with that
mm-hmm.
I've never took the time to deal with. I'm like, oh yeah, that's that itching feeling or this sense of me being uncomfortable at one place because I never was allowed to have the luxury to stay anywhere for too long. I went to like
Yes.
seven different schools before I got to high school.
Wow.
Yeah,
Yeah, to stand still. Yeah,
yeah, I don't know how to stand still.
right.
My dad grew up with the motto that you have to keep two full-time jobs in the United States at all times to be able to survive a recession. I live with that to this day. So when I only take on one full-time job, I feel bad about it. And
Mm,
I'm teaching myself not to feel bad about it. And I'm teaching myself to stop having this immigrant mentality to try to do so much.
mm.
Before I know it, this life has come and gone. And what was it for? For this
Well,
new pool?
you've already made the world a better place with your book and your
Lucie, you're
presence and
amazing.
your
Thank
stories.
you.
I always ask my guests if they have any sayings or proverbs or expressions that they grew up with, because I think that sayings and expressions from different countries like kind of always say a little bit about the mentality or the culture, you know. German is such a weird one, and we have such weird sayings like if you're like not seeing something obvious, you have tomatoes on your eyes. That's
Oh,
really
okay.
weird. Tomatoes on your eyes. Or if you're joking around too much, you ate a clown for breakfast. A little bit dark, but I found some from Ecuador that I thought,
No way.
yes, I totally looked this up, and I found a few that I thought were really funny. So one of them is you got apparently when you guys make a huge effort at something, you say se sacan la madre, you smash the mother. Is that something you've ever heard?
Yes, we say it all the time. Se sacó la madre. But it's almost like saca, like take out the mother. Saca. Yeah, it's a weird
You
phrase.
take out the mother.
I don't even know what that means. Give me another
Okay,
one. Give
there
me
you
another
go.
one.
Okay, so it says here Ecuadorians don't get drunk. They make plastic bags out of themselves. Se hacen funda.
I've never heard that one.
No?
Se
Okay,
hacen
maybe you don't
funda.
drink. I'm kidding. Maybe you never get smashed drunk. That's why. I also like this one. When you flirt, echar los perros,
Yeah.
you throw the dogs,
Unleash the dog. Yeah.
unleash the
Yeah,
dogs.
yeah. That's funny.
That's amazing.
I don't even know where it comes. I have some friends from Spain who one day they said, "Me cago en la leche," and I was like, "Wait, you shit on the milk? Why would you do that?"
What does that mean?
It's just an expression when they're like, "I am astounded.
Oh, I shit on the milk.
I shit on the milk," and I was like, "Okay, remind me never to invite you over for breakfast." What's another one? What's another one? What's another one?
Okay, and then this one I found that I thought was really beautiful and very poetic. Quien a buen árbol se arrima, buena sombra lo cobija.
Oh, I have heard that.
He who leans close to a good tree is blanketed by good shade.
Yeah, isn't that great?
Oh, that's
Yeah,
amazing. I love
that.
that. That's so beautiful. That's such a beautiful image. And must mean that there's a lot of good trees in Ecuador.
Yeah, there's a lot of good trees in Ecuador.
Did you grow up with any sayings that you like?
Right when you said that, I remember my grandfather. My grandfather once told me, it would translate to, before you die, you have to plant a tree, raise a child, and write a book. And then as I got older, I was like, wait, but we're gonna kill this tree for the pages of this book. So I feel like it's a contradiction.
I love that. That's so funny. That's great. And in German, it would be, before you die, you have to plant a tree, raise a child, and buy a Mercedes.
But the only phrase that I didn't grow up thinking it, but in interviewing my mom for the book, that has stayed with me, and that's everyone always brings up to me when we have a conversation, is when she told me that dreams should not have borders.
Oh yeah, I love that.
That kind of phrase has been like the calling card for the book itself. Dreams should not have borders.
Yeah, that's true. I love that sentence in the book. And I think what I was thinking reading that is that that was like the greatest gift she could ever have given you, because I think that's what's always so sad when adults put limitations on kids' dreams, right?
100%.
That's like 100%. A real scar that some people carry around. But yeah, and you definitely didn't have any borders on your dreams, because you did so much cool shit that we didn't even get to. Your stage show with your two friends with the name that shall not be named.
The comedy with the name nobody wants to say.
Which is also so funny that you guys did that, that you toured all over, the stories you describe of how you got into the whole Latino film festival world, how you all the stuff that is in the book, that you must all read if you're watching and listening.
Please.
Rafael Agustin, are you
That
ready
is-
for the
I'm
poll
ready.
question?
I'm ready for you.
All right.
Bring it.
If you had to come up with a catchphrase for the United States of America, what would it be?
Everyone's welcome, asterisk, except for you.
I love it. If you had to cast a movie about the Statue of Liberty, who would you cast as the Statue of Liberty?
This is a remarkable question because I remember reading once that the model might have been like Middle Eastern.
Yes.
So
I've read that too.
While I feel everyone would have been thinking of a French actress, my head already went to like, oh, it should be a Middle Eastern actress, you know?
Okay, an unknown Middle Eastern actress.
Yeah.
If you were the president of the United States of America, what American food would you ban?
Oh, it's so hard because I love all food. Mayo?
Really?
No, I'm kidding. I don't like spray cheese. I'm very bad. Here's the thing, honestly, I'm very bad with any ¿cómo se dice? When food is like microwavable.
Yeah.
Like I'm so bad with all that stuff because I didn't grow up like that. Like when we first moved to the States and I was like, what are these things that you have a whole meal by just putting in a microwave?
Microwave dinner. That's what you mean.
Microwave dinner. Like I don't understand it.
No, I 100%. I think just the concept of a microwave is such an American thing. I know growing up for me, that was like, it was like like my mom would be like, ugh, these microwave people.
And you know, and now they've shown research that the radiation might not be good for you and you can't stand so close to it. And I'm like, oh my God, so should we even have microwaves in our homes?
No. And they're listening to us too. Am I right? No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, exactly. Baths in our kitchen is one thing, but microwaves.
Yep. If you had to deport one American person, who would you deport?
If I had to deport one American person. You just reminded me in the book because someone texted me like, did you just really write that? When I had to, people don't know that you kind of have to get to make sure you don't bring any diseases to the United States when you're becoming a citizen. So we had to get an STD test as a family, but I had sex for the first time. So I was stressing out that me losing my virginity was going to mess up like our chances of becoming Americans. And I honestly
totally fell for it in that section. I was like, oh my God, he has an STD. Oh no, which one is it? Oh no.
But the best thing is I wrote the line. I forgot I wrote it. I was so mad at myself. I wanted to deport my penis. And I was like, did you just write, I want to deport my penis? If I can deport one American, like in history or now?
Anybody really in history now. I've also had people say that they would never deport anybody because they're against the concept of deporting people.
Oh, that's beautiful. No, I would get rid of somebody. I just gotta find the right person. I would want Steve Bannon to self-deport.
Nice.
Because he was the one who was trying to come up with this concept of people self-deporting themselves. He wanted to make America so bad for immigrants that they would self-deport. So I wouldn't deport anyone, but I would request a self-deportation by that guy.
Yeah, that'd be great. And where do you think he should self-deport to?
Maybe to Canada because they're too nice, and maybe he'll like stir up the pot a little bit. Canadians are like fucking amazing. I'm hearing how everyone wants to move to Canada now. That's gonna be the new immigration wave. Everyone going to Canada.
Yeah, it's true. I think during the pandemic, the like number one most Googled thing was, how do I move to Canada here in the US?
Wow.
So funny. Okay. Two more questions very quick. If you could add a new face to Mount Rushmore, who would you add?
Oh, what a beautiful sentiment. I know it's only presidents, but what I always thought we were missing is almost like a new, like American Mount Rushmore of like citizens, like the Martin Luther Kings of the world, right? Like we don't have like, we need like a civil rights Mount Rushmore is what we need.
Love it. I love that. That's great.
Yeah,
so you would just make a new Mount Rushmore.
You kind of need that of all the great people who have made America a better place.
Should it be right next to Mount Rushmore? Or
It
would it
should
be
be
somewhere else?
facing it, like literally facing each other. Like, despite what all you did, we still succeeded.
Yes, I love it. And like just slightly bigger and better lighting too.
Oh, that's hilarious.
I love it.
I
Okay.
look forward to starting that campaign.
Yeah, I know. I love that. That's a good idea. Last question, probably the most important question. Usually when I do this podcast, I have a life-size cutout of David Hasselhoff next to me because
You're
I'm
lying.
German. No,
You're lying.
no, I'm German. When I was 6, I went to a David Hasselhoff concert in Hamburg, Germany. So last question, I ask everybody this. Rafael,
Night Rider.
no, that's not the question.
Oh, sorry.
Rafael Agustin, do you know how I can meet David Hasselhoff?
Oh. Let me tell you something. I do not. But the second I know how, I'm putting you two together because this must happen. As much as I need to meet like Oliver Stone and Zach Morris, like I will not rest until I meet the man who like inspired me.
I've met him.
How?
Because I do
Mark
Comic-Cons.
Paul?
I
You've
do
met him?
Comic-Cons. Yeah, my boyfriend farted in front of him in the bathroom. I do Comic-Cons, and we were at a Comic-Con in Colorado Springs, Colorado. And he was there, and we were riding the bus with him every day. We talked to him, and then one.
But what was he promoting? Not Saved by the Bell.
No, it's not promoting. You sign autographs. You meet fans, and it's not like New York or San Diego Comic-Con where you promote something. All the other Comic-Cons are just like for meet and greets and stuff like that.
Oh, got it.
So he does a lot for Saved by the Bell. And so on the like second day of the Comic-Con, my boyfriend, who was just there, to hang out with me and stuff like that, comes out of the bathroom and he's like, oh my God, I was standing at the sink washing my hands and I just let a big fart rip. And then Zach Morris came out of the stall
Stop
behind me.
I have no comment for that. In fact, I've changed my answer to I'm deporting your boyfriend. That's who I'm deporting. How dare he? How dare he offend Zach Morris?
Oh my God. The next Comic-Con that he's at, you got to come.
I would love. I just discovered, and I did not know this because this changes the book an awful lot. I just discovered that he's half Asian. Mark Paul Gosselaar, I'm trying to look it up. His mom is from Indonesia. So he identifies as half Asian, and that blew my freaking mind because I had a bigger connection to Zach Morris than I ever imagined.
And there you go. More proof that immigrants are more American than Americans.
Yes.
Or that whole thing is a made-up concept anyway, an artificial made-up concept. Rafael Agustin, I could talk to you forever and ever. You are amazing. I love your book so much. I can't wait to see the movie, the TV show, the theme park, and whatever else you do with this. Everybody must go buy this book, Illegally Yours, a memoir by Rafael Agustin. Rafael, where can people find you and what do you want to tell people about before we go?
I'm Mr. Rafael Agustin on all social medias. I just got on TikTok, for the love of God. My publisher was like, you have to. It turns out that Instagram, Twitter, Facebook don't sell books, but TikTok does. Oh. And they have. Like I have like this community. People were like, I read your book and I love it. So it's so cool.
That's so cool.
I'm the only like Rafael Agustin out of LA, so easy to find. And where can they find the book, you said?
No, I said, and is there anything else you'd like to tell people about?
Oh, no. I mean, just that, remember to tell your story. The part about being vulnerable and being able to share your story with others, I'm not asking people to like become writers, but they could become better human beings and they could become better leaders and they could become better family members and friends just simply by sharing your hopes and dreams or fears and concerns with those around you. Don't hold on to that stuff. Like life is so short. And if I can leave people with anything, it's that we are in this together. That's what it is. It's not you versus me. It's not us versus them. It's that we're in this together. So I hope that we can all leave this world better than we found it. And it's that simple in my eyes.
Oh, that's beautiful. Wow, amazing. Thank you so much for being on the podcast. Thank you to everybody who listened to this episode or this episode and any other episode. Thank you to Douchebag Steve, who's a very valued patron of this podcast.
What a
We
name.
love you. Yep, what a name. Only someone who's not a douchebag would call themselves douchebag. So
Touche, douchebag Steve.
Douchebag Steve, you're the best. Thank you so much for listening. Please leave us a little 5-star rating and a review if you are so inclined. It helps a lot. Check out the Patreon, the YouTube. Please buy Rafael's book. It's everywhere you can find books. Am I right?
Yeah, everywhere.
And go check out his TikTok and his Instagram and his Twitter and everything else. DM him and be nice, be kind. This has been Immigrant Jam, the podcast. We love you. Good night.
Bye.